Hello, Fierce Factor. I am so excited to share with you this incredible interview that I just had with our very own Pop Aesthetic Leadership Academy client, friend, a nurse practitioner extraordinaire, Heidi Hermel from Mankato, Minnesota. Heidi in this interview shares a lot about her experience transitioning from an insurance-based medical practice to building her own rapid growing medical spa. She talks about some of the challenges she had with securing funding as a female with, a business that was all built around her and really no proof of concept. She talks about the nuances of developing team, investing in team early. She shares some tips about really how to handle rapid growth. For so many of you, you're growing so quickly, and the challenge is not about figuring out how to grow, but figuring out how to sustain that growth in a way that is still deeply fulfilling, where you can show up and feel joy in your business instead of being resentful for its growth. She talks about building and creating culture and being intentional about accepting no drama in your practice. And, really Heidi's story is just so incredibly moving because she talks about how she really kind of just started out as a provider for the ability to care for patients, to build relationships with them, and to access and give them access to healthcare in a different way. She has since been able to build and develop and nurture not only a team, but 3 kids, retire her husband, and build a multi-million-dollar medical spa. And so it's just going to be so powerful for you to hear her story. And I just can't wait. I'm so excited. So without further ado, enjoy this episode of The Fierce Factor with Heidi Hermel. Hi there. Welcome to the Fierce Factor podcast. I'm your host, Kaylee Lindholm. And I think it's time for us women to shift the conversation in business and step into our feminine leadership to do the most iconic work the aesthetic industry has ever seen. Each week, I'll be bringing a powerful dose of strategy, sarcasm, solutions, and sass that will rev up your creativity and ignite your brilliance as you link arms with me along our shared path of personal and professional growth in 20 minutes or less. Let's go. All right. Hello, Miss Heidi Hermel, nurse practitioner, owner extraordinaire, and big boss lady of the Skin Clinic Med Spa. I am so excited to have you, Heidi. Welcome to the Fierce Factor podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
You look so cute. For those of you listening to this podcast, I'm on a video interview with Heidi, and she has the most adorable scrubs on with like a Tiffany blue. Do you call it a Tiffany blue or teal?
Teal.
Teal. Yeah. Teal logo and matching frames of her glasses. You look adorable. So is this the new color and theme of your new location?
Yeah. Black and teal have always been my logo colors, and we've incorporated it into the new space.
Love it. Heidi, I'm so excited to have you. I have had the pleasure of being able to watch your extraordinary growth over the past year or so. And so I'm just really excited for you to share some of the dynamic nuances of your journey, where you started and where you are now in the midst of literally moving into the most beautiful new location. So I'd love for you to just sort of introduce yourself to the listeners here on the podcast and tell them a little bit about your journey into aesthetics.
Yes. As Kaylee said, my name's Heidi Hermel. I'm a certified nurse practitioner, and I have a practice in Mankato, Minnesota, which is an hour south of Minneapolis. And my nursing background started in obstetrics. And then after I became a family nurse practitioner, I worked my first year in GI and then family practice, and really loved family practice because I loved having the connection and getting to know my patients and seeing them over and over again and literally watching some of them grow up. I had families from babies to grandparents and loved it, but it became very exhausting. I loved being a nurse practitioner, but no longer loved my job. Just with all the extra things that were required, working for corporate healthcare, I was told how to do it, when to do it, how long it should take me to do it. And I was just getting burned out. So I decided to go to urgent care thinking I would have better work-life balance. And that just was not a good fit for me. I like getting to know patients and developing that relationship with them. And urgent care was just an assembly line. Get them in, get them out, There was no follow-up. I just didn't have the joy anymore in my job. So aesthetics kind of fell in my lap. I had taken a Botox and injectable course with another nurse practitioner. We really loved that aspect of doing procedures with combining our nurse practitioner degree. She now has moved back to Lincoln, Nebraska, and also has a practice. And I met an advanced practice esthetician who needed a medical director. So all I knew was injectables. And she introduced me to laser and skin pen. So I decided to leave family medicine altogether and the medical side of working for somebody and open a practice. Let's see, it'll be 3 years in August that I decided to do that. So it took a little bit of time to find a location, build out my space, and I opened January of 2020.
Wow, perfect timing. Right before the pandemic hits, right? So this is incredible. So you started in obstetrics, knew that you loved that connection with patients, being the provider, watching these patients sort of evolve and grow as humans and meeting their families, and went to urgent care. And did you, when you started this like Botox injectable course that you took, was it your plan then to incorporate this into your urgent care practice?
No. So I actually worked in family practice at the time and was able to go to CME courses. And I actually discovered it because I had many patients ask me about Botox for migraines. And working for a very large healthcare organization in Minnesota, the neurologist I worked with did not treat migraine headaches. So we were stuck treating it, and it's not an easy thing to treat. So I would exhaust options, and then patients would ask, well, what about Botox for migraines? So I researched it to learn how to get it covered when I would refer them.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, this looks really interesting when I could see all the other things Botox help with besides wrinkles. So Lauren and I decided to go take an injectable class. And then I really saw a different side. When I was younger, I loved art and those type of things. And I always loved doing procedures when I worked in family practice. So I felt like it was just the right fit for me. But at that time, I never thought I would open my own business and have an aesthetic med spa. So it's interesting how that steered me in the direction I am today.
Right? It sort of just happens organically. Be careful what you wish for.
Right.
So that's so interesting. So then now all of a sudden you're a business owner.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Was it your intention? I mean, did you feel entrepreneurial? Were you like, I want to be a business owner? Or that was just more of the natural way for you to solve this need that you knew your patients had?
Yeah, I think so. Both my parents had businesses growing up. So when I decided to open my own clinic, it was also medical based. So I never thought I was going to be just strictly aesthetics. So when I made the leap and decided I'm going to open my own clinic, I never thought I'd be busy enough doing aesthetics. So I felt like I needed to have that medical clinic as well because I was comfortable. I knew how to do that well, and I loved it. And I knew I would love it even more when I was not constrained to the time. Like you have to see 17 patients a day and you have to do it this way. So that was a big learning curve too, because there's a lot of differences when you open your own medical practice. And I knew I wanted to do cash-based because as a single provider without having a coder, office staff, there was really no way for me to get credentialed or to do the coding. Plus, I knew I could provide much better care at a more affordable cost without getting the insurance companies mixed into it. So I worked with the Small Business Development Center and came up with a business plan and struggled to get a loan because I was, female who they said, what's your business? And I said, I'm my business. I didn't have any collateral. And okay, well, your husband's going to have to sign this loan. And I said, yeah, he will. He's all for it. And I remember thinking I wanted to see 8 patients a day and that would keep the doors open. So 2 months after opening, I was doing at that time just injectables and then medical. The pandemic hit and I was shut down by the state of Minnesota exactly 2 months to the day. So it was about 11 weeks of the uncertainty. Mm-hmm. And during that time, it really made me reflect on, is medical really what I want to do? We're in the midst of a pandemic. Am I the right clinic for these people to call when they have health issues? And I think it opened my eyes up to I don't really want to do that anymore.
You have to actually think, do I want to be a COVID testing site at this point?
Because I thought, well, what else am I going to do? If I can't see sick people because I also have healthy people coming in for Botox and fillers. So I really had to make that decision. And it was the right decision because when I opened, I really stopped advertising anything medical because I didn't want a sick person calling me and coming in. I mean, at that time, I couldn't even get masks, gloves, because I was in a healthcare organization. So I really went to just aesthetics, and every single month, it just kept growing and growing and growing. And I knew aesthetics was where I needed to be.
Well, kudos. And obviously, I know the end of this story, so I'm not going to jump there. Most of you listeners can figure, since she's on this podcast, where this ends up. But I think it's important to kind of talk about that because I think there's a messy middle that we roll over because it's like PTSD. It's like having your children and then you forget that it was like the most horrific labor and recovery process ever. And you're like, let's have another one. This sort of interesting space where I think a lot of providers / turning into business owners, knowing that they want to get into aesthetics, maybe even having a business on the medical side and really leaning on that insurance patient. What did you find about the mindset of the patient, right? That is like used to handing their insurance card and being taken care of versus now we're a more, I don't know, call it concierge, but we're a cash-based type of practice. What was that like? Talk to me about that process.
My rates were very affordable. I was really targeting clients who either had a high deductible, some have no insurance, or really just the access to me because it was just me. When you called, you got me. There was no message, there was no call center. If they texted, it was me. But a lot of people, I think they feel when they have insurance, they're entitled to use it. And why would they pay $100? And even people with a high deductible that maybe had a $6,000, where if they went to urgent care, it would have been $400, but they will never meet that deductible, but they didn't want to pay me $100. And I realized that my time was more valuable than having that expectation where they would take an hour of my time and then I would deal with the pharmacy and refills and all that and paperwork. And I thought, you know what, this is not why I started my own business. And I really learned very quickly, this is not the space I need to be in. We have large healthcare corporations who do that. It was the accessibility. And I was trying to provide care that was different and unique. And when I was in primary care, I had a closed practice, meaning when you get to a certain number of your patient panel, they tell you can't take any more patients because it takes too long to get in. And I really enjoyed it. But I realized, why am I doing this? Why am I giving up so much of my time for no pay? And I realized very quickly when I had my own business that my time was worth something to me. And, I went to school for how many years and I no longer wanted to do that.
It sort of took you making that decision, and drawing the line in the sand. Like, this is what I believe I'm worth. And it doesn't really matter whether a patient decides that I should be able to pay cash or with my insurance card. This is what I'm expecting. Like, it just sort of is making that leap. And I ask that because, look, our industry is booming, right? And we have a lot of providers of different specialties, with different clinical competencies in different fields that are like, hey, I have patients that I'm seeing that are interested in Botox and I could take a course, right? Dentists, like you name it. And this happens where they're like, but I'm so used to being a medical doctor. My patients are so trained and conditioned to, it's sort of this habit of like, well, my insurance will pay for everything, right? And so I think it's important for our listeners to understand that it's not going to really happen for you. Like, that transition is something that, what you're saying, like, you have to just decide that this is what my value is and what I'm worth.
It just blew my mind that somebody would come in and spend $600 plus on filler or Botox, but they didn't want to pay $100 for a medical visit that I spent an hour. That's where I realized this shouldn't be my space anymore. And I wanted to enjoy going to work every day. And those were the types of things that made me not enjoy it, because there's an expectation too, and to feel not valued when you try so hard, whether it's by your employee or by a patient coming in who thinks they should be able to use their insurance And I would tell them that is not what I can offer you here because I don't have an entire business office that can process your insurance claim, do the prior authorizations and all of that. And I just decided that's just not the space I need to be in anymore.
You make such a good point. What you're paying for is access to me. And I think as we look even at parallel this to the aesthetic space, when there's so many providers that offer Botox and filler and they're looking for products and procedures or call it cool sculpting or whatever, right? A branded procedure by name, that it's a different mentality. It's a mindset shift that I believe based on the level of care that I'm providing, based on my years of experience, based on the experience that the patient's getting coming here and the result that they're going to get, whether it's for something healthcare related or it's more clinical or it's more aesthetic, right? It's about you're accessing me as an individual, as a provider, and I'm going to be taking care of you. And this is what it's going to cost. So let's talk about this transition because I think it's so important versus the business owner who maybe has been already, let's say, like a cog in a very successful med spa wheel, right? Like I see how the operations work and now I'm leaving and branching out and opening my own practice and I have all these patients that are following me and I'm just going to follow those systems, right? You've sort of created it by yourself. Like you invented this sort of new wheel for yourself. Let's talk about what are some of the biggest lessons, like challenges that you really learned through the process of now building and growing this business? Because here you are. I'm a concierge. I'm going to just say concierge. I don't know if that's the right terminology. It's just, in my opinion, if I can pick up the phone and talk to a nurse practitioner right there and get what I need, that's a direct level of care. Going from that to now I'm building a business that needs to be sustained by more than me, right? Because now you're getting busier on the aesthetic side. You're actually commanding, you're asking for a dollar amount that's more than a couple $100. So people are paying 600,000, thousands plus, right? So let's talk about that transition to now becoming a real like business owner. What were some of the challenges that you faced through that process?
So as I got busier, I realized, number one, I cannot do it all. So I would check them in, check them out, take their phone calls, schedule. And what would have been a year ago in April, I decided I need to hire somebody. I can't do this all on my own. Because I no longer was able to offer the level of care I really wanted to, because I would have people calling all the time and messages. And, I would be done at the day and I would be answering messages till 8, 9 at night. And I thought, well, this isn't why I'm doing this either. I had 3 kids, husband, and I just thought this isn't going to be sustainable either. So I hired an office assistant. Hiring employees was very, very hard. I still remember when I went to the bank with my business plan, the person said, when you grow, are you going to just be you? And I said, yep, it will be me. I can do it all. And I honestly thought I could because I thought I'd be seeing 8 patients a day. So then he said to me, are you going to cap out how many patients you have? Because he could see there's no way. You just can't do it all. So I brought on employees. And with the pandemic, hiring and being a boss is not easy. The pandemic has made it a whole different. So I hired somebody and I did not realize when I hired somebody, my life should get easier, but my life got much harder. It was a lot more chaotic. And I give people the benefit of the doubt and thought, you know what, I can make this work. I will get this employee to do what I need for my business. And I just kept hoping. And I hired somebody else. And that was an even worse decision. That lasted 5 weeks. I took them to Miami to the Global Aesthetics Conference, came back and said, I really don't want to work this much. I'm done. So I thought, well, my life was so much easier after that employee was gone. I thought, I can do this.
You talk yourself into it and then out of it again. You're
yeah, I thought,
it's the business model.
Right. I'm like, okay, one okay employee combined with another not good employee. One okay employee was so much easier than 2 that weren't very good. So I thought, well, we'll make it work. But I realized I was growing quickly and I could not continue to grow with just one staff. And at that point, I had already decided I was building my new space and it was much larger. And I thought, I need to start building my team. Even though I was in 500 square feet of a little lobby with 2 procedure rooms and me, the only provider, I need to build a team to be ready to move into our new space that was supposed to be in February. But with the building and construction, it got pushed out till April. Things just kind of lined up. You've taught me in like the Pop Leadership Academy, and I've listened to your podcast. You should always be recruiting. And I found my esthetician because I knew her mom and she stopped in. My office manager, she basically helps me run my business now, was a really good client who I thought when I met her would be amazing. And then she reached out to me. my esthetician had another esthetician she knew, and we weren't really ready for it, but she said, I think she'd be a really good fit. And I said, yeah, let's bring her on. Another girl that just started, she graduated from college and was going back for nursing, was my oldest daughter's friend's sister who reached out. So the right employees just kind of fell into my lap, although it wasn't easy. I think it was just the right networking and building a good reputation helped. And so we had 7 staff in this little tiny office. And I thought, if we can all survive here, I've created a good team, because there was no drama with 7 women and 2 patients and a small space. So building a team has been difficult, but very, very rewarding, because now that we have the space and I can see my estheticians getting very busy very quickly and bringing on a new injector that is learning very quickly. And we're expanding to the space next door to have more of like an aesthetic spa with IV therapy. And I think that's going to be in October. I've realized it's not the experience, but it's the team and the culture to create. And we have created a really good culture. And that is so important to me, because with being a nurse, you work with a lot of women. And when I worked in urgent care, it was not the job, but the culture was really, really toxic. Just people telling on each other, and you're not doing this and that. And I thought, we're not in junior high anymore. We're professionals. We need to treat each other that way. And so building that culture for me is so important, because I want to enjoy going to work every day, and I want to love the people I work with. I'm not saying I want to be best friends, but I want to love that environment we're in so I can continue to nurture them and help them grow too as an individual. And it's scary though when you bring on extra people and think, oh my gosh, I'm responsible for their livelihood.
Oh yeah.
But when you have a team and they all work together, it just falls into place.
Yeah. Well, I think, look, and I've been sort of along this process with you, Heidi. So you're so humble, but it's not easy. And I think you sort of earn the team that you build, right? It's like you kind of have to go through the struggles of investing in an employee, taking them to Global Aesthetic and then them leaving. Like, you're going all in. Like, you don't know, you don't have the crystal ball to predict the future. But what you learn is this such important lesson that you're talking about. You didn't say everybody just happens to be no drama. You talked about building culture. And I think it's intentional. When we talk about always be recruiting, right? Like, you stop putting up with no drama. And that's the difference. And I think sometimes we get so desperate, like, I need this team right now so fast. And the mindset that I've seen you take on, the approach, is that I'm in it for the long haul. We've got the vision, we're adding, we're building, we're making a bigger impact in this community, and I'm going to need more team. Right this second, it's very scary for me to think of making this big investment, but I know that if I can look at it as I'm building a championship program, you're Nick Saba, like, I'm building a program. That's what I've really appreciated and respected about the way that you look at investing in your people and nurturing and growing and developing them. And then you have this culture because you've created that, because that is what you have intentionally decided to build. Do you agree? And when you think about culture, what do you think are some of the things that you have invested in or not, right? Or like not put up with, that have contributed to this really productive culture that you have?
I can teach, but you can't change personality and work ethic. And creating a good environment where your employees want to come to work, they're excited, they're passionate, is what has helped me grow my team. And the injector I found, I have people reach out all the time. Are you hiring? And for some reason, I replied to her, and I don't usually reply because I get so many messages from other business owners asking me questions and med spa. And I did, and it ended up being the right fit. And just when one of my employees didn't just suddenly quit and didn't show up at work, my 2 next employees, I had reached out to them already anticipating, and they were ready to go. They came in, they had a positive attitude, their work ethic was amazing. And I want to create a friendly environment. So when clients walk in the door, they enjoy being there because of the smile on the face of the person at the front or when they answer the phone. And that is my role, is to not just be their boss, but to try to create that environment. And as I get busier, I don't necessarily want to be the boss. I've hired somebody to help manage employees so I can be on the provider side, mentoring my estheticians and new injectors and letting someone else deal with some of the human resource roles. ultimately, I know I am responsible, but being able to make them feel they're just as part of the team as I am as a provider.
It's true, right? Imagine running this business, being that old Heidi, answering the phone, following up, scheduling, doing all of the things. It would be completely impossible.
My husband now works with me too, and my kids. And my husband jokes, how many personal assistants do I need? He said, you have two. No, but really, I mean, I do need, yeah, you need a team. And when we moved into our new space, my 14 and 15-year-old were there moving boxes and putting furniture together. And there's nothing more rewarding than for them to see the hard work pay off. And my 17-year-old, she'll be a senior, wants to go to school for nursing and work with me, which is amazing because she doesn't even want to hang out with me, let alone work with me. But she assures me when she's 22, it'll be much better.
I read a statistic the other day that 80% of what someone learns is nonverbal and 20% is verbal. And so I love the idea that you're teaching your kids as they're watching you go after your dream, take risks, overcome obstacles. And here it's just proof in the pudding. You have a daughter. That's amazing. I mean, that's just like gives me chills to think that, it's like, hey, I see and look up to my mom and I want to be a part of this as well. So cool. Congratulations on that.
Thanks. Yeah, I think both my girls, I hope they both want to have some part. My younger, she would be an amazing injector, but she probably could run the business. She is very organized and she'll probably run it someday.
I mean, you're building your legacy. It's incredible.
Right.
You have grown very rapidly, Heidi. What would you say are some of the best practices for someone? We talk to, especially in our Confidence to Scale program, like women who are just growing faster than they can even. It's like, all of a sudden I wake up and I wanted to see 8 patients a day and I'm seeing 18. It's champagne problems. Like it's amazing growth, but it is actually a problem when you don't have capacity in place. And there's other things that happen when you grow quickly. So you have adapted and pivoted and polished as you've gone along. What would be some of those best practices for those women and men, right, who are in that situation of really like bracing for rapid growth? And what are some of the things that if they were to ask you, would you say that I would do these things or put these things in place to help prepare you along that path?
Hiring before you need somebody. I made that mistake. It was our first vacation where we took a long weekend with some friends and our kids. It was a Friday and we were eating lunch and my phone rang like 7 times and everybody looked at me and I'm like, it was reps and clients. And I got home and I'm like, I can't do this. But as scary as it is better to anticipate and hire when you almost feel like you're there, hire. Because when you're there, you're going to scramble. And then you don't have the time either to train them because you're just too busy. And that's what I ran into. And every practice is different. There's no like training manual on how to have somebody come in and like answer the phone and answer questions about Botox and laser and answer somebody who says their Botox hasn't worked yet and it's been 2 days. All these things that they have to know right away, where if you can really mentor your staff and anticipate, if you hire the right people, it will pay off. But I think that so many people are afraid of investing in things that aren't things, like people. Right? Like you have to pay them every week, but I can't believe like I hired an accountant. I hired somebody to help with social media and advertising before I had staff. I realized very quickly, why am I sitting here trying to do QuickBooks when I don't know how to do QuickBooks?
Nor have any interest.
Right. I'm like, I shouldn't be doing this at 8:00 on a Thursday night when I'm exhausted and I'm going to make a big mistake. It's a big leap. And I think people definitely are the best investment though. It's a way better investment than a laser that gets used a few times per week.
Yeah. And in certain orders, I would say too, it's like being smart about what you need at the moment and anticipating what you're going to need, right? Like, I think I'm cracking up, but it's so true. Like people are like not real things, like as if it's like moving parts. Like I can't tell you how many times I hear the hiring pool has just changed. It's like people did not disappear. We didn't just lose half of the population of people. We have to get creative and think ahead. I think there are a lot of excuses right now about why I can't do that. But I can definitely spend $50,000 on getting new branding and a new logo with some random company, right? Instead of looking at the investment in people as truly assets that are going to help you build, right? And each employee should essentially pay for the next employee if you do it right. If you really go into it with that mindset, but it is scary. It is definitely scary.
I never thought a year ago I would have 7 employees and 8, including me. But I realized very quickly when I got the right staff in place, it's so worth it to invest in staff to make the business work and to make it grow. I can do a lot of advertising, but if I don't have the systems in place, people to answer the phone appropriately, get them scheduled, follow up, if we're playing phone tag, then the advertising doesn't matter.
Exactly. It could work against you. You're putting fuel on a fire that's burning in the wrong place or going in the wrong direction. Before we sort of start to wrap up, I want to talk about, this is coming up a lot and you sort of built through COVID. So I'm interested to hear your perspective about this in a couple different ways. So there's a lot of speculation right now. Inflation is at an all-time 40-year high, whatnot. We all know we're paying more for everything, right? And there is talk of a potential, at least economic constraint, if not recession coming. And I'm hearing things like, okay, once that passes, then I will XYZ. So be it, one I hear a lot is, then I will release insurance patients and then start taking cash pay patients, or then I will hire more people, or then I will make those investments. Do you have a thought process around making strategic investments during a downturn, or as we're sort of seeing this recession come into focus? Are there things that you would recommend in terms of preparing your business now for that?
It's definitely scary. It keeps me up some nights, but being a business owner, you have to learn to pivot, whether it's an economic upturn or downturn. I just remember thinking, if I can make it through a pandemic being open for 2 months with literally have invested my hard-earned money and making no money, that taught me a lot about running a business. And I think it really separated in some businesses the good from the great. Who could pivot and get through this? And we'll be experiencing that, I think, in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, who knows? But I don't think it's a time to necessarily step on the brakes. I look back and I had just gained momentum when COVID hit. I should have been advertising because because it was so cheap. Everybody was coming to me, here, please advertise. And people were at home and had nothing to do. My business has grown, but I think you have to learn to pivot, and we can't control the economy. There's a lot of things we can't control as business owners, but you have to learn how to adapt when something out of your control happens. And that's where I think a lot of business owners struggle, because every single day there's something out of my control that happens and I have to deal with it. And some days I want to scream, and some days I go home and I'm like, oh, this was an amazing day. But we can't predict the future. And if we always look and think, well, I'm going to hire people after the recession, it might be too late.
It's so true. I think we need to really understand what it means when we're in a recession. And one thing I try to reinforce with you guys in the academy too is there is a transfer of wealth that happens when there's a recession. Money doesn't disappear. People don't disappear. It's a shift in where all of that goes. And so it's sort of this opportunity where when everybody's zigging, you zag, or whatever you want to call it, doing what feels counterintuitive because we're scared, but leaning into the fear, not being stupid about it, but making really strategic investments now that are going to help you have a lucrative cash flow, have a team that is going to be willing to ride it out and stay with you. And it's like a lot of times we wait, right? Investing in coaching and strategic advisory for your business. These are things that you're going to sit and wait around until the shit hits the fan. You have not prepared yourself to withstand it. And so I think listening to you and like businesses like yours and businesses who have been doing the right things, building the team, taking the time to move into the new locations, putting the investments in an order, are going to really be able to take advantage of a time when other people are not, because they haven't.
And I have friends who say, I'm going to wait to have kids until I have more money. I'm like, you'll never have more money. You just adjust your life to pay for daycare, because I had 3 kids in 3 years and that was not in our plans, but it certainly wasn't because we had more money. That's just what happened, and we adapted. And that's where it is a little bit scary, but I don't know. People really like their Botox. And if it's between Botox and going on vacation for 1 week, they're going to pick Botox so they look good every month, or getting their nails done or Botox. People love doing things for themselves. And I think COVID really changed that too, where I think self-care is not being selfish. taking care of yourself. And I think COVID really opened a lot of people's eyes up to that. So it's hard to know what the future will bring, but hopefully when you have the right tools in place, it'll be fine.
I agree with you too, in terms of the prioritization of self-care. I mean, I literally tell my husband now, I'm like, I'm going to a wellness appointment. And he's like, okay, just is what it is. And it's whatever that means for me, like back off, you know? Okay. So I have like this burning question because I love the story about you going for your business loan and the bank giving you a hard time and all of this. Like, did you get the loan? Question. And two, if you have you been back to say, look at me now?
I did get the loan. It took 2 months and we had to put a third mortgage on our house, even though we had the assets. But the Small Business Development Center really recommended, they said, get a startup loan. So it's totally separate. And it was a good call because COVID hit and we wouldn't have had any cash reserve. And once COVID was over and I paid that loan off in 2 months after, and I went to another bank to get my loan for my new business, it was really satisfying.
Yeah.
To say you did not want to borrow me. It was not a large amount of money. And I was able to pay that off in 2 months after a pandemic, and I'm expanding. And the way I was treated was not a place that I would ever give my business to again. And I kept saying to my husband, it's because I'm a woman. And he's like, no, it's not. I really believe it was. And it's really sad that it was 2020 that I went through that.
Oh, 100%. I need to pull up the statistic, but women are underfunded by, it's like double digits, women to men.
Right.
That is so interesting. And I love that. I love that. Like, I told you so. And I also think too, like women tend to be less proactive about feeling worthy of getting funding. Like, don't be afraid, ladies. Go get what you need. Don't take no for an answer and you will pay it back, right? Like, be smart about it. I think sometimes when we know we have a cash reserve, we're more willing to take a risk. That's what it's all about. You have to go and take risks so you can put that little fear chip aside. We're like, what happens if, right? Like, kids aren't going to eat top ramen. We'll pay it back. We'll figure it out. I love that. I love that. Heidi, this has been amazing. Any last sort of things on your mind or questions I didn't ask in terms of, I think really two like huge concepts here. One is the movement to a cash-based business, number one, for those people. And two, building a business rapidly and building a team. Any sort of final thoughts that you would want to share with anybody in those positions?
As scary as it is, the best thing I ever did was to take the leap, because the life I'm able to show my family, and I mean, my husband is able to stay home, work with me, and show my kids hard work pays off, because there's nothing easy about this. I work a lot of hours. I took Saturday off. I didn't go into the clinic, but I still worked from home. You know, I haven't had many days off, but it's really rewarding when you can see the work you're doing for yourself, how it's benefiting your team and your family. But it is a risk. And I just think, what if I would not have taken the risk?
Yeah. I saw this, it was like a frame or a picture or something the other day that said, but what if it does work? Or what if it does happen, right? Like, we are always thinking in our head, what if it goes wrong? But what if it goes right? And I think that's the way to look at it. What if I did accomplish this? And for you, it's building a multi-million-dollar business. It's supporting and nurturing and growing and developing 8 cute little humans, plus your kids, right? Like, that's not even to mention your children, retiring your husband, like so much opportunity and success if you hadn't taken that leap, if you hadn't said, I'm not going to be shackled by the way that I was told healthcare should be. I'm going to be disruptive. I'm taking a new approach here. And Mankato obviously thanks you dearly. That's amazing. Well, Heidi, thank you so much for sharing your insights and all of your resources and being a wealth of knowledge and inspiration for everybody here. And hopefully everybody listens and takes your advice on taking that leap, building their team from the ground up, and doubling down on investing in that culture and in yourself and your team. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate working with you and having been a spectator on this journey as well.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your help as well. It's been so valuable.
All right, Heidi, thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Wait, before you go,
Hey, if you're vibing with this conversation and you want to join me on my mission to help 100 inspiring and intentional women cross the next $1 million milestone in their business this year, or leader, maybe you want to become one of them, head over to Facebook and join our free community, the Fierce Factor Society. Over there, we're taking this conversation to an elevated level. Get access to resource guides, podcast supplements, guideposts, and direct communication with me, my expert team, and of course, a society of fierce women making big moves and disrupting the status quo in aesthetic wellness. You can link directly through the show notes or head to Facebook and search the Fierce Factor Society. See you there, goddess.